Imagine spending over $100,000 on a piece of farm equipment, only to have it become a massive paperweight within a few years because you can't find replacement parts. For farmers across America and around the world, this nightmare has become reality time and time again. Today, we're diving into 10 revolutionary farm machines that promised to change agriculture forever, but instead became expensive failures because their parts were too rare to keep them running. These aren't just stories about broken equipment, they're cautionary tales about innovation without infrastructure, ambition without afterthought, and the harsh reality that even the most brilliant machine is worthless if you can't fix it. Number 10. The Allis-Chalmers Gleaner L series combines. In the late 1970s, Allis-Chalmers introduced the Gleaner L series, combines with a radical longitudinal rotor design that was decades ahead of its time. The engineering was brilliant. The L2 and L3 models used a unique accelerator cone system that processed grain more efficiently than conventional combines. But here's where things went wrong. Allis-Chalmers faced financial difficulties throughout the 1980s, and by 1985, the agricultural equipment division was sold to Deutz. During this corporate chaos, the production of specific parts for the L series was discontinued or transferred between facilities, creating a parts nightmare. The accelerator cone assembly, the unique rotor bearings, and specialized drive components became almost impossible to source. Farmers who had invested in these machines found themselves cannibalizing multiple units just to keep one running. The irony is painful. The technology was so good that it influenced future combine designs across the industry. But the farmers who trusted the brand early were left stranded with machines they couldn't repair. Many L-series combines ended up as parts donors or scrap metal, not because they wore out, but because a single broken component with no replacement rendered the entire machine useless. Number 9. The International Harvester 1456 Turbo Tractor. International Harvester's 1456 Turbo Tractor, produced from 1969 to 1973, represented cutting-edge power for its era. With a turbocharged diesel engine producing 131 horsepower, it was a beast in the field. The problem wasn't the concept, it was the execution and what came after. The turbocharger system used proprietary components that were specifically engineered for this model. When International Harvester began its catastrophic decline in the late 1970s and early 1980s, culminating in the company's agricultural division being sold to Tenneco in 1985, parts support evaporated. The specialized turbocharger assemblies, unique fuel injection components, and specific transmission parts became extraordinarily difficult to find. What made this particularly frustrating for farmers was that the base 1456 non-turbo model remained relatively serviceable, but the turbo variant required components that simply disappeared from the supply chain. Farmers reported waiting months for parts, only to find that warehouses had been liquidated or inventory had been scrapped. The 1456 Turbo went from being a premium machine to a liability that many farmers wished they'd never purchased. Number 8. The Ford FW60 four-wheel drive tractor. In 1977, Ford and Steiger entered a partnership to produce the FW series four-wheel drive tractors. The FW60, the largest model producing 335 horsepower, was an impressive machine built for large-scale operations. But this partnership created a parts supply chain nightmare that would haunt owners for decades. The FW60 used a combination of Steiger components, Ford-specific parts, and hybrid assemblies that were unique to this partnership. When Ford exited the partnership in 1985 and later sold its tractor division to Fiat in 1991, the parts support structure collapsed. The articulation joints, specialized hydraulic pumps, and unique transmission components became nearly impossible to source. Owners found themselves in a bizarre situation where some parts could theoretically be sourced from Steiger, others from Ford, but many components existed in a no-man's land where neither company took responsibility. The FW60s were extremely capable machines, but their dual heritage became their downfall. Many ended up parked behind barns, too expensive to repair and too specialized to part out effectively. Number 7. The Heston 6600 self-propelled windrower. Heston Corporation built its reputation on innovative hay equipment, and the 6600 self-propelled windrower, introduced in the early 1970s, was a testament to that innovation. It featured a unique hydrostatic drive system and a sophisticated header design that made cutting hay remarkably efficient. The problem emerged when Heston was acquired by Fiat in 1977. The 6600's specialized hydrostatic transmission components and unique header drive assemblies were manufactured by specific suppliers under contract. As Fiat reorganized operations and shifted focus to other product lines, these supplier relationships dissolved. By the mid-1980s, farmers discovered that critical wear components for the hydrostatic system were unavailable. The header drive gearboxes, which required regular maintenance, became impossible to rebuild because replacement gears and bearings were no longer manufactured. What was once a premium windrower became a parts-hunting expedition that consumed more time than the machine saved. Many 6600 owners eventually switched to competitor brands, not because the Heston was inferior, but because they simply couldn't keep it operational. Number 6. The Whitefield Boss 4, 150, and 4 180 tractors. White Farm Equipment created the Field Boss series in the late 1970s to compete in the high-horsepower tractor market. The 4 150 and 4 180 models featured unique design elements, including a distinctive cab-forward configuration and specialized drivetrain components. White's financial troubles began in the early 1980s, and the company filed for bankruptcy in 1985. The Field Boss series, which had only been in production for a few years, suddenly lost all factory support. The specialized transmission parts, unique hydraulic components, and proprietary electrical systems became orphaned almost overnight. The situation was particularly cruel because these tractors were relatively new when parts support disappeared. Farmers who had recently made substantial investments found their nearly new equipment becoming inoperable over simple failures. A broken hydraulic pump or transmission bearing could sideline a $70,000 tractor indefinitely. The Field Boss models became symbols of misplaced trust, powerful machines that demonstrated why parts availability matters as much as initial performance. Number 5. The Versatile 1150 four-wheel drive tractor. Canadian manufacturer Versatile built a reputation for robust four-wheel drive tractors, and the 1150 model from the late 1970s was no exception. Powered by a Cummins VT903 engine producing 380 horsepower, it was built for serious work on large farms. The complications arose from Versatile's unique engineering choices. The 1150 used a proprietary articulation system and specialized power shift transmission that were largely manufactured in-house or by small Canadian suppliers. When ownership of Versatile changed hands multiple times from Versatile Manufacturing to Ford New Holland to Böhler Industries, the parts supply chain fractured. Specific components like the articulation pivot bearings, unique hydraulic control valves, and specialized transmission clutch packs became extremely difficult to source. The problem was compounded by the relatively small production numbers of these large tractors. Unlike mass-produced equipment, there wasn't enough volume to justify aftermarket manufacturers stepping in to fill the gap. Owners reported keeping multiple 1150s just to ensure they had spare parts, which defeated the entire purpose of purchasing such an expensive machine. The 1150 demonstrated that even excellent engineering fails if the support infrastructure doesn't outlive the product. Number 4. The Minneapolis-Moline G1000 Vista tractor. Minneapolis-Molin's G1000, produced from 1963 to 1969, was famous for its unique cab design featuring a panoramic windshield that gave it the Vista designation. Beyond the distinctive appearance, it incorporated specialized hydraulic and electrical systems that were ahead of their time. When Minneapolis-Moline was absorbed by White Motor Corporation in 1963, the writing was on the wall for long-term parts support, though it took years for the consequences to fully materialize. The G1000's unique cab components, specialized instrument panels, and proprietary hydraulic lift systems gradually became unavailable as White consolidated product lines. By the 1980s, finding replacement parts for the Vista's distinctive features was nearly impossible. The curved windshield glass couldn't be sourced anywhere. The unique hydraulic control valves were no longer manufactured. Even basic electrical components specific to the Vista's dashboard became unobtainable. Farmers who loved the visibility and comfort of the Vista found themselves forced to park these tractors or undertake expensive custom fabrication to jury-rig modern components into place. Number 3. The Co-op E4 tractor. The National Farm Machinery Cooperative, through various partnerships, produced Co-op branded tractors in the 1950s and 1960s. The E4 model, manufactured by Cockshut, represented a significant investment for farmers who believed in the cooperative movement. The fundamental problem with the co-op tractors was their dependence on a complex web of manufacturers and suppliers. Different components came from different sources, and when the cooperative structure began to collapse in the late 1960s, parts availability became chaotic. The E4's engine components, transmission parts, and hydraulic systems came from various suppliers who had no obligation to continue support once the cooperative agreements ended. Farmers discovered that their co-op tractors couldn't be serviced through standard cockshut dealers, nor could they easily source parts through other channels. The E4 became an orphan machine, abandoned by its complex parentage with no clear path for maintenance. Number 2. The Oliver 2255. Tractors. Oliver Corporation's 2255 tractor, produced briefly in the early 1970s, represented the company's attempt to compete in the high-horsepower market. With a turbocharged Caterpillar V8 engine producing 146 horsepower, it was a formidable machine. The problem was timing. Oliver was acquired by White Motor Corporation in 1960, and by the time the 2255 was introduced, Oliver was essentially a brand name rather than an independent manufacturer. The 2255 used a unique combination of components: a Caterpillar engine, a proprietary Oliver transmission, and specialized hydraulic systems that were specific to this model. Production numbers were low, and when White began phasing out the Oliver brand name in the mid-1970s, parts support for the 2255 evaporated remarkably quickly. The specialized transmission components and unique hydraulic parts became impossible to find. Even though the Caterpillar engine could theoretically be serviced, the rest of the tractor became an unsupported orphan. Owners of the 2255 faced the frustrating reality that they owned a powerful tractor rendered useless by the inability to source a $50 hydraulic seal or a specific transmission bearing. Many were eventually scrapped, despite having relatively low hours and plenty of useful life remaining. Number 1. The Deutz-Allis 9190. Taking the top spot is the Deutz-Allis 9190, a machine that represents perhaps the most frustrating example of parts scarcity killing an otherwise excellent tractor. Produced in the late 1980s after Deutz acquired Allis-Chalmers Agricultural Division, the 9190 was a 360 horsepower four-wheel drive beast built for large-scale farming. The 9190 incorporated Deutz air-cooled diesel technology